They called it the cleanest conviction in county history. No drawn-out trial, no hung jury, no appeals. Just a young man, found guilty, sentenced, and forgotten. But the truth is, nothing about this case was clean. From the very beginning, it carried the sour stench of something deeply wrong. The man convicted was Daniel Price, 25 years old, a quiet warehouse worker with no criminal record. Prosecutors painted him as a cold-blooded killer who shot a wealthy businessman twice in the head, leaving him dead inside his own home. The case against Daniel rested on three fragile pillars: a single fingerprint on a glass, the vague account of a neighbor who claimed to see him nearby, and a written confession signed after 16 relentless hours of interrogation. 16 hours. No lawyer. No food. No sleep. 12 of those hours weren't even recorded. It was enough to raise eyebrows, yet the jury deliberated for just 2 hours before sealing Daniel's fate, life in prison without the possibility of parole. The case was officially closed. But cracks began to show the moment anyone looked closer. The neighbor who swore he saw Daniel changed his story 3 times. First he admitted he wasn't sure. Later, under pressure, he became positive. Then he backtracked again, saying it could have been someone with the same build. The fingerprint on the glass, the supposed smoking gun, was only tested once. It was never retested, and the chain of custody was a mess. The confession Daniel signed was one he swore had been coerced. He claimed the lead detective threatened him, telling him he would never walk free unless he wrote his name on that paper. Still, the jury believed the state's version. What they never heard about was the safe in the victim's home. Police found it wide open, emptied of documents and bank records. None of this detail ever surfaced in the courtroom. It was buried. 3 years passed. Daniel sat in his cell, silenced and forgotten. But then a law student named Hale Rivers stumbled across his case while combing through old files for a research project. Something about it gnawed at him. The timeline felt wrong, the interrogation screamed misconduct, and the missing hours of footage raised every possible red flag. Driven by instinct, Hale visited Daniel in prison. Their conversation left him shaken. "I never met the victim," Daniel insisted. "I wasn't even in town. I was 2 counties over, fixing my mom's car." His mother confirmed the story, as did a mechanic at the shop. Yet neither had testified at trial. Hale discovered why: Daniel's court-appointed attorney never filed the alibi. The question was, why? Was it incompetence, or something darker? Digging deeper, Hale discovered that the attorney had long-standing ties to the district attorney's office. Old friends. Drinking buddies. Just months after Daniel's conviction, the lawyer was rewarded with a comfortable new position. It didn't smell like coincidence. It smelled like payoff. The deeper Hale went, the uglier the case became. The victim, celebrated publicly as a wealthy businessman, had been living a double life. He had mob ties, offshore accounts, and was under quiet federal investigation. 2 weeks before his murder, he had been subpoenaed. Then he turned up dead, shot execution style. Why would Daniel Price, a warehouse worker with no connection to the man, be the killer? Unless, of course, someone needed a scapegoat. Someone the system could chew up and spit out quickly. Hale buried himself in late-night research, pulling old archives and combing through buried police files. And then he found it, a second fingerprint taken from the crime scene. It wasn't Daniel's. It wasn't the victim's. It belonged to someone else entirely. That print had been logged in evidence but never turned over at trial. It had simply vanished from the official record. Hale ran the name tied to the fingerprint, and his stomach dropped. It belonged to a deputy. Not just any deputy, a current officer, still working in the same county. His name was Troy Holt. Suddenly everything made sense. The coerced confession. The missing alibi. The unmentioned safe. The evidence that disappeared. This wasn't a sloppy investigation. It was a cover-up. And the officer whose fingerprint was found inside the victim's home was one of the very men responsible for putting Daniel behind bars. Hale now faced a terrifying choice. To push forward meant not only exposing a wrongful conviction, but dragging a sitting deputy, and possibly the entire county justice system, into the light. Powerful men had every reason to keep this buried. One night, as Hale sat at his desk surrounded by stacks of files, his phone buzzed. The caller ID was blocked. Against his better judgment, he answered. A low voice rasped on the other end. "Stop digging. Or you'll end up like him." The line went dead. Hale froze. His apartment seemed darker than usual. A car had been parked outside for hours, its engine off, its windows black. His hands shook as he reached for the curtains, afraid to pull them back. The warning was clear: back off or pay the price. But Hale couldn't stop. He had seen too much. He was in too deep. And the next file he opened, the one stamped, confidential, revealed something so explosive it could not only free Daniel Price but bring the entire county's justice system crashing down. What Hale didn't know was that someone else already knew he had it. The file Hale had opened was thin, barely 10 pages, but what it contained was dynamite. It was a confidential internal memo, written months before Daniel Price's trial. In it, a detective raised concerns about Deputy Troy Holt's involvement in the victim's life. The memo mentioned secret meetings between Holt and the victim, unexplained cash transfers, and even surveillance photos showing Holt outside the victim's house just days before the murder. None of this had ever surfaced in court. Hale leaned back in his chair, his pulse pounding. This wasn't just misconduct. It was evidence of a conspiracy. The deputy wasn't an investigator, he was a suspect. And someone had buried the truth to make sure Daniel took the fall. The next morning, Hale tried to bring the memo to his supervising professor at the law school. But when he arrived at the office, the lights were off, the door slightly ajar. Inside, the desk drawers had been emptied, files scattered across the floor. A cold dread sank in. Someone else was one step ahead of him. He stuffed the memo into his bag and headed for his car, but the same black sedan from the night before sat parked across the street. Its tinted window rolled down just enough for Hale to see the faint glow of a cigarette. Someone was watching him. Hale knew he was in danger, but he also knew he couldn't stop now. He arranged a meeting with a journalist from a local paper, one of the few reporters who still chased corruption stories. They agreed to meet in a crowded diner. Hale slid the memo across the table, his voice low, his eyes scanning the room. "This is bigger than one wrongful conviction," he said. "If this comes out, it'll bring down half the county." The journalist's hands trembled as he read. "Do you have any idea what this means?" "Yes," Hale whispered. "It means Daniel Price is innocent. And it means Deputy Holt is a killer." But before the journalist could respond, the bell over the diner door jingled. Hale's blood ran cold. Deputy Troy Holt himself walked in, uniform crisp, badge shining. His icy blue eyes swept the room, and for a moment they locked on Hale. Hale forced himself to stay calm. He couldn't run. Not here. Not in public. He needed to finish what he had started. Within 48 hours, the paper ran a front-page story exposing the buried fingerprint, the suppressed memo, and Holt's ties to the victim. The fallout was immediate. Civil rights groups demanded Daniel's release. Federal investigators swooped into the county courthouse, seizing files, interviewing witnesses, dragging skeletons out of closets that had been locked for decades. And that's how the man they tried to bury, Daniel Price, walked out free, while the system that condemned him finally began to crumble. But the question remains, how many more are still trapped in the shadows of corruption, waiting for the truth to surface? If this story gripped you, drop your thoughts in the comments. Should Holt have faced more than just trial? Don't forget to like, share your opinion, and subscribe for more true